Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners from coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada, and around the globe. And viewers, by the way, on Rumble and Brighteon and Gab and Truth. And yes, even on YouTube. Oh, well. You know, you just got to put up with Google, I guess. So, you might notice I have a camo shirt on here. It's hunting season in Wyoming. In fact, elk season started on the 15th. Been out a little bit, been way too warm. I just can't get excited about, you know, chasing critters in warm weather. It just doesn't do much for me. But that's about to change. In fact, there's a storm barreling in. It's going to be part of our ranch story today. And we'll get to that when we get to that rather shortly. So today we're going to cover, as I promised, the second part of the pension story I'm bringing you. You know, I brought you the history of pensions in the last show. If you didn't listen to that, you really should. You really should. I explained the difference between contributory plans like a 401 and fixed benefit plans, which are like public pension plans or big corporate employer private pension plans. Important to know the distinction. And today we're going to be covering, as I promised, the problems that pensions are having throughout the United States, in fact, around the world. But we're going to focus on the U.S. because the pension picture out there is not rosy, as you are about to find out. And if you are relying on a pension, may I suggest that you take other steps to protect yourself, and whatever you get out of that pension will be kind of gravy. I wouldn't rely on it if I were you, particularly after you hear some of the stats here, and I'm doing the tip of the iceberg, folks. You can do your own research on your own pension plan. They have to give you the information, and you should demand it. You should be staying abreast of this if you are a pensioner or going to be pensioner, and you're counting on it. And then, of course, we're going to have our founder's quote. Actually, it's from Plato today. It's quite the quote. I think you'll like it. And very apropos leading up to the election. And then we're going to brush on vast amounts of voter and election fraud and electioneering and all sorts of nastiness occurring throughout the United States, including some very recent boosts over the last week or two by Obama or Democratic appointed judges in several states that kind of, should we say, have upset the apple cart that the Republicans had going to try and ensure the integrity of our elections. We'll see if there's some emergency relief through injunctions or appeals on these cases, but it'll give you a taste. I'm going to devote maybe the whole next show to what's going on the voter fraud gambit, shall we say, by the Democrats. I mean, that's all they have is fraud. They don't have a candidate. They certainly don't have the policies, and they absolutely don't have the track record. So, you know, let's cheat, lie, and steal and commit treason. You know, who cares? All right. If we have time, we're going to go into some economic rat-a-tat-tat because, as I've been telling you, they have not been telling you the truth. And there's several videos on the website under economics, psyops, under the audio bar that kind of point this out from other folks way smarter than I. And some one incredible video from Gold Silver. And this guy has been in the business forever and is well known nationally and internationally. And he actually has a list on this video of all the information they have taken down just in the last month so that you can't do comparative analysis between what they're telling you and historical results in certain economic sectors. I mean, that's how low down and dirty this has all become, the psyops and the lie. All right, let's start with the founder's quote, shall we? Plato, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you wind up being governed by your inferiors. Think about that quote. Get off the couch. Get involved in this election. Make sure you're registered. 10 other people, 10 of their friends, 10 of each of their friends are registered and voting. And vote early, folks. There's going to be games and shenanigans played on election day. I flat guarantee you. Avoid it. It is painless to vote early. In fact, it's a pleasure to vote early. And absentee, once again, don't mail that ballot unless you absolutely, positively, no way around it, have to. Bring it in person and watch them put it in the stack. All right, so the ranch story. Well, we were patting ourselves on the back for getting all ready for winter. We kind of saw this storm coming 2 or 3 weeks out, this first storm of the season that's gathering momentum as I speak to you. Clouds are swirling and billowing around the peaks. The snow is starting to spit. And it's supposed to be a pretty decent storm, particularly at higher elevations. And it could, these early storms, all they need is a little twist or turn of the low. And what was supposed to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches becomes a foot or 2. And if you couple that with the wind, you're talking about 3, 4, 5 foot drifts. Obviously, you need a plow and equipment to handle all this stuff. Otherwise, you are going nowhere for a very long time. Well, we had everything set. We had the plow truck all set. We have chains on it. It's all chained up. The big Bobcat is all chained up for cleanup work and around the corner work. And in case something goes wrong with the plow, I'll get to that in a moment. And all sorts of other things that we do to prepare for winter. The wind fences are up. The snow fences, which stops drifting over certain portions of the road. Everything is battened down. The cords are run to heat equipment in the barn, and on and on and on. It's really quite a list. We have to put markers out along the road because there's parts of the road where if it's night or it's driving horizontal snow, oh yeah, that happens in Wyoming, despite what the Chamber of Commerce tells you. You have no idea where you are without those markers. So all that was done, and we were patting ourselves on the back for being all ready for the coming winter. Well, guess what? The control that lifts and angles and makes V or flat the plow on our 1-ton dually dump truck, that is the plow truck, we didn't check that. We got it all mounted. We got it all set. We assumed the control was working before, so control should be working now. And a couple days ago, just on a whim, I went out there and checked it. Well, guess what? Click, no movement. Click, no movement. So we scrambled around, tried to fix that, got it kind of working, but not enough to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, and the snow is dumping. So we ordered a new controller, $550, lovely, unanticipated expense, but no way around it. And the controller is on its way. Well, the snow is hitting tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday, and then there's another storm coming in after that. And the controller is in Denver. It's not here where we need it. So, it's going to be kind of interesting here the next 3 or 4 days. Fortunately, we have the big Bobcat chained up, as I mentioned, so we can, but it's such a pain in the butt. You have no idea how trying to do a mile ranch road with a Bobcat. It's just horrible. So we have a last resort that hopefully we don't have to use. And we played around with the old controller. The ranch lieutenant who left and went out of country because he's sure that America is coming to its demise, I love him to pieces. He was here for 7 years, but he was pretty tough on equipment. And really, I should have checked it before. So I guess he was tough on this controller, and we kind of played with it, and we got it kind of partially working. I mean, I think it'll kind of maybe do the job for a couple of passes on the road, but if the wind is howling incessantly, that's not going to be enough. So we're kind of geared up and battened down, and we'll see what happens, and I'll bring you the story in the next video and podcast broadcast, which will be Monday or Tuesday, give or take, with luck, next week. Anyway, The moral of this story is don't sit there and grin like a Cheshire cat because you think you're all prepared. You better check the little details because in the end, the little detail will reach up, grab your butt, and shake it with a vicious grip. Okay. All right, let's talk. Before we get into the pensions, I don't know if you heard, but FEMA, whose webpage, you can go see it, is filled with DEI, ESG, all sorts of nonsense. And like at the bottom, maybe page 2, it's, helping the American people in the times of disaster with the taxes that they paid in. Yeah. Well, it seems that FEMA has now announced that their approach to the hurricanes, which has been, shall we say, intentionally poor in red areas particularly, is coming from a position of equity. That's a quote, a position of equity. Let me define that for you. Karl Marx said it best. To each according to their needs, from each according to their abilities. In other words, if you don't think right, and you don't vote right, and you don't live in the right zip code, you ain't getting any help. And everybody else is, because in one way, shape, or form, they're disadvantaged to you. Okay? That's what our government has become, folks. If you want to change it, I suggest you get involved, and you get about 2 weeks to do it. All right. Let's talk about, I think we'll skip the economics. We can come back to that. Let's talk about the pension plans, right? So pension plans are severely underfunded. I mean, there are exceptions, but they are exceptions. The rule is they're underfunded. In fact, the average pension plan 2 years ago, and it's gotten worse, as I'll explain, was only funded to 78.6% of their liabilities. The liabilities being what they pay you for your pension. That's right. A little thing. You're the guy who paid in or the gal who paid in, and this is your pension you're relying on. But that seems to be second fiddle. And of course, a lot of the pension plans, because they've been infested by the likes of BlackRock and Vanguard, whom they invest heavily in, are like going down the ESG, DEI rabbit hole using your pension monies that are supposed to be going to you in checks now or in the future. The 100 largest public pension funds, this is a defined benefit fund, which I explained last week. You basically you get a set amount for a set period, and that's what it is. Those 100 public pension funds are under 80% funded. Now, that was just about a year or two ago. They're trying to studiously avoid doing new studies on this. I wonder why. And this has kind of spiraled downhill. And it's spiraled downhill since 2021 when they were underfunded. Because, number one, the effects of the 11 years prior to COVID, the Russell Bum and Boom time period, all fake, of course, due to fake money. But they invested wildly in bad stuff. And they invested wildly, folks, because your pension plan, depending upon which plan you have, there are some exceptions. Check with your people. They have to give you the information. Your pension plan was desperate. Most of these pension plans were showing they were basing their entire budget on 6 to 7 to 8% returns year over year over year. When they didn't make those returns, they got a little desperate because they saw the hole deepening, the difference between what they had to pay and the difference between what they had to pay with widening. So they started taking risky bets on stocks and equities and all sorts of weird stuff. In some cases, believe it or not, cryptocurrencies. Wow. With your money, of course. Some of these bets paid off for some pension plans, but a lot of them didn't for most pension plans. So they went deeper and deeper into the hole, which made them even more desperate, and they compounded their errors. In fact, the public funds lost back in 21-22, $220 billion between March and April alone at the time of Russia's invasion in March of 2022 into Ukraine. $220 billion, folks. which made them even more desperate, which led to worse decisions and an avalanche of bad decisions that should never have been made. Public pensions are borrowing increasing sums to meet their payout obligations. Think about that. They're borrowing money and paying interest to meet their payout obligations to you. You know where that ends. We're kind of seeing it with the $35 trillion that the United States owes, and most of the other Western countries in their respective degree. Okay, now they're taking on more risk by investing leverage money rather than pension fund money. So they're compounding their errors. Let's take the Teachers Retirement System of Texas. That's the country's 5th largest public pension fund. It's been leveraging funds, in other words, using borrowed monies to make investments since 2019. Okay? Do I need to tell you that they're not in good shape? The largest public pension fund in the United States, at least state-wise, not including the feds, which are in the same boat, I might add, is the California Public Employees Retirement System. They are steadily going downhill at a faster and faster rate. And during the bull run in stocks, which kind of now is, should we say sputtering, it's kind of in its melt-up phase, they invested more and more in riskier and riskier stuff to make up for, let's face it, their insolvency. In fact, many state pension funds, their fixed benefit funds, are going to end up going bust. I mean, it's just the way it is because of that strategy. There's no way out. Except that the government, remember what FEMA said about the hurricane relief? Yes, on equity. It's going to all be based on equity. So they're going to take from all of you folks who have 401ks and other types of retirement plans, contribution-based benefit plans, and they're going to take from you in one way, shape, or form, starting there, to make up the difference in the public pension plans. You can count on it. And they will tax you into oblivion, or they will figure out something which is not a tax but a fee or whatever. And then they will distribute that out to their buddies in the public pension funds, who, of course, the large majority of their members, shall we say, don't vote for conservative ideals or the Constitution. The average public pension fund deal, if you kind of take the average, has lost $13 billion just in the 21 to 23 time period. That's a lot of money, even spread out over a number of funds. It's a lot of pensioners' paychecks going into the future. And there are some funds like the Houston Firefighters Relief and Retirement Fund. It began investing in cryptocurrency, when things were kind of going south on the spread between what they had and what they had to pay out. Should we say that they do this in a way, most of these pension funds, which are not transparent, but they have to provide you the information. Inquire of your pension fund if you are a pensioner, and make appropriate decisions based on real information. Of the about $4 trillion in assets, it's $4 trillion that are managed by public pension funds, defined benefit funds in the United States, more than 2/3 are allocated to risky investments like cryptocurrency or equities, which can be pretty risky too, even though they have their little bumps from time to time. So the retirement system's ability to meet their commitments are subject to stock market and other market swings. That should give you a warm fuzzy, particularly given the economic situation we're on the precipice of. There was a great quote, There was a great quote by one of the guys who follows this, Merrill Matthews, okay? And you should look him up. He has all sorts of in-depth information on what's going on with the pension plans and their problems. Quote, It's like the gambler who's on a losing streak but keeps betting in the hopes of making up some of the losses. If most public pension funds were already underfunded last year, what does that mean today when the market has been in a 6-month on and off slide? Okay, I'll let you kind of figure out what that means. And then the costs of pension funds, of operating them, because of ESG and DEI and the influence of Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock, and the rest of those Looney Tunes, the non-bank banks, that aren't regulated at all. Their costs have been increasing in terms of administration, which of course doesn't help their spread between what they have to pay and what they have to pay. Yeah. In fact, there were retired public servants. Let me back up here. Retired public servants, who, by the way, aren't living that comfortably off their pension checks. Just ask them. There's some eye-popping payouts here and there. Like there's this one guy, he's a dental whatever, mucky muck. He gets $76,111 monthly. Yeah. But most of the folks are getting pension amounts far, far, far less. In fact, you'll be interested to know that the average pension payout over the last several years, going back to 2016, in fact, was between $27,415 and $29,000. That's not a whole bunch. It's $16,441 in West Virginia, and it was $37,934 in Connecticut. And, Connecticut is a rather expensive place to live. I don't know what $37,000 buys you. I doubt it buys you your rent and utilities in Connecticut. The majority of that income, by the way, isn't supplied by taxpayers. Between 1993 and 2014, 64% of the pension funding came from investments. We've already discussed about the fact that their investments weren't coming even close to their projections in terms of their long-term budget. In fact, the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, their calculation is that pension contributions account for only 4.7% of state and local spending, which, by the way, is up from 2.3% around the turn of the century, 2002. And the employee retirement benefit funds, this is in the public pension funds, were 66% on average of the amount needed to pay the promised benefits to you. This is before all the other nastiness we've talked about and before what's coming at us like a freight train in terms of economic reality, no matter what lies they want to send in your direction from now until the election. It's interesting. There's a handful of states that are kind of well-funded. They're at 90% of their obligations, which, by the way, is still underwater, but not as much. And they include New York, Wisconsin, Tennessee, and South Dakota. Congratulations to those states. I think Wyoming is up in that neighborhood too, but I'm not sure. Okay, so now there's a bunch of calls. People are starting to jump up and down as they figure out what's going on. So now there's a bunch of calls by legislators in the states and Congress up there at the feds and the administration who's trying to figure out how they're going to stave off this disaster, using your money, of course, is that public employees have to go into cash balance plans. It's no longer a defined benefit plan because they're broke. It's a cash benefit plan, which means it's kind of a hybrid between a defined benefit pension and a contributory pension. It's kind of half of a 401k, if you will. Okay. Those plans, by the way, are generally way less generous on the payout. Oh, well, aren't you surprised? And they calculate benefits based on the beneficiary's lifetime earnings, kind of like Social Security, which has its own problems if you're relying on that, rather than their salary, which is what defined benefit plans generally hinge on in terms of your pension benefits after retirement. So Anyway, there's changes a coming, folks, and there's busts coming. There's bankruptcies coming in the pension industry, and there's going to be a grab for your cash, whether you're a pensioner or not. But particularly if you have, shall we say, put your nest egg into a huge IRA or KEO plan. I'm just warning you up front, okay? Desperate governments do desperate things. There's a lot of good sources out there. I have some great articles on the website under Family Safety, under the audio bar, under Rat-a-tat-tat. Please take a look at them and these other videos that we have posted for this show. Now let's talk a little bit about voter fraud, electioneering, election integrity, you name it. I mean, I can give you a score of examples, and we don't have the time to do that. I'm trying to keep these short, but we're going to do it more, a lot more, in the upcoming show here in a few days. We have suffered several, and by we, I mean conservatives, people who believe in America, faith, family, and the Constitution, have suffered several pretty critical setbacks in the last week. Number one, a judge appointed by Democrats, in fact, that kind of flows up to Obama. What a surprise. They nullified 7 of the rules that the Election Integrity Board in Georgia put into place to safeguard this election, including verifying absentee ballots, like signatures and dates and all that kind of stuff. Having to do a hand count, in other words, take the ballots out of the voting machines and count them. 2 poll workers counting the ballots. They each have to agree on the tally. They count them in blocks of 50. And that tally that the 2 of them agree on has to match the number of ballots that the voting machine, which of course is above reproach, shows was cast or is stored in its guts, which hopefully aren't connected to the internet, but I wouldn't count on. And the other thing is that election certification, which the new rules in Georgia said you don't have to certify if you have a doubt about a certain number of ballots, a percentage of ballots that were cast until you get to the bottom of it. Well, this judge said all those 7 rules are unconstitutional. Yep. And they weren't done on time and a whole bunch of other excuses. So hopefully the Republicans and the people who care about election integrity, America, and the Constitution are gearing up to try and bat this back, but the time is really short. I mean, we're down to 2 weeks now. In Alabama, a federal judge appointed by Obama. Do you see a common thread here at all? The DOJ, who, by the way, sued Virginia last week to stop them from purging their voter rolls of illegal aliens. I'm not making this up. The article is on the website. You can read it. Your jaw would just be, your tax money is paying the treasonous monsters at the DOJ to sue to undermine your elections and allow illegal aliens to vote. Think about that circle. Wow. That's all I can say. I mean, if this doesn't piss you off, I don't know what will. But this Obama judge, this federal judge, says that Alabama, after the DOJ lawsuit, can't purge their voter rolls of illegal aliens or dead people or anything else because the purge was filed 4 days late and it's within 90 days of the election. And it's just, too much. And it's a change systemically to the system. A systemic change, yes. I think if we go back to the beginning, the systemic change is having illegal registrations to begin with. This is a correction to the systemic change. This is not a systemic change. But I think you get the message. Once again, article on the website to read to your disgust. And in Georgia, another judge, democratically appointed, democratically elected in, of all places, Fulton County, where Trump is being prosecuted, where all the election fraud occurred in 2020 and the suitcases being wheeled in at 3 in the morning because nobody was counting. We have to get some sleep and all that kind of good stuff. Fulton County, that judge. And he ruled that the Election Commission in Georgia doesn't have the authority to make changes to the rules, and that it's, quote, too much, too late, quote, unquote, too much, too late. The too much, too late, by the way, is that, once again, you have to take out and count hand ballots. You have to hand count ballots out of the voting machines in Fulton County, according to the rules, and, double check the accuracy of the machines. Okay? Too much, too late, folks. Too much, too late. And and also having to do with registration and absentee ballots. So that's where these Democratic judges are falling on election integrity, and they're grasping at straws. I don't know if there's enough time for the Republicans and the real election integrity folks to swing into action and counteract this nonsense, but this is kind of a big deal. This is kind of a big deal, and it didn't go our way. We did have some victories. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld the legislature up there, and if you send in an absentee ballot and your signature doesn't match, or the date's not on it, or the wrong date, or anything else is wrong with that envelope or ballot, it goes into the, shall we say, suspect file and doesn't get counted until verified or not verified and discarded. So we've had a couple of wins here and there. There's a win that's potentially brewing down in Arizona. I'll bring that to you the next couple of days. There might be a decision on that between now and then, and that's kind of a big deal for Arizona, which is, particularly in Maricopa County, just rife with corruption and treason, as we all already know. But that's what's going on the election fraud and, shall we say, the election fraud lawfare front. So this is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take. I hope this brought you up to speed. Check out those pensions, guys. If you're relying on it, go to your pension fund, get the information, take the appropriate steps, and get involved in this election. There is no tomorrow, folks. I mean, you don't even want to think about what would happen if Kamala Harris and crew get elected, i.e. Obama's fourth term. It will not be pretty. Keep the wind at your back. We'll talk to you in a few days.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.